أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Welcome to another Quran study, brothers and sisters. We are going to read from chapter 60, no, 76, verse 2. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. We created the human from a liquid mixture from two parents in order to test him. Thus, we made him a hearer and a seer. So immediately here we can see like there are so many verses in the Quran where God speaks about scientific things as well. And here God says that He created the human from a liquid mixture. And in the first chapter that was revealed to the prophet, there God says, and basically the chapter name is Alaqa, which means like the embryo. Um, God tells us that how He created the human being, and he says, thus we made them a hearer and a seer. So what I understand from this is that he gave us the eyesight, like that we can see and look around, and he gave us the ability to hear, right? But this is not only like seeing with your eyes and hearing with your ears, but also like use your mind that, looking at the things that you see, and based on that, make decisions and determine why we are here in this world and how things happen. And the messenger also tells us and teaches us that the things that we see, that we shouldn't like look at things like animals do, for example. We should think about those things. When you look at the sun, or when you look at the sky, the stars, a tree, a small creature, maybe a flower, or some kind of an animal, we shouldn't just look at them like that. We need to think about it, how God created them, how all these beings came to existence, and what the functions are. So submitters should not, live a life which is very, um, like not a random life, let's say. We should, when we wake up, we should think about all these things that God has given to us, but also like our own bodies. Eventually we are not the ones who are controlling our bodies, like our heartbeats, we don't control them. It is God who is controlling them. So we need to be very grateful towards God that He has given us this, especially like things like the eyesight. Like if you close your eyes and try to live a day totally closed, then probably we would understand how difficult that is, and how important it is that we have our eyes, how we can see them, right? How we are able to see. That light comes into our eyes, and then it sends this electrical signals to our brains, and our brains understand what those things are. Also, for example, the colors, there are so many people who don't see any colors, and I have seen like some videos of people who use this special glasses that gives them the ability to see colors. And you can see the reaction that when they see things in color for the first time, people cry. So but most of people, they take this as granted, right? Because we are born this way, we can see everything. It's like very normal for us to see and to hear and to do, to use our bodies. But it's like such a big blessing from God that He has given all these things to us. So as submitters, we should definitely be grateful every day, in everything that we do, that we see or hear. We should remember God, that He has given this to us. 3, we showed him the two paths. Then he is either appreciative or unappreciative. So immediately after the verse where he says, thus we made them a hearer and seer, he says we showed him the two paths. Then he is either appreciative or unappreciative. Like this tells me, of course, that when God is talking about the eyesight, like seeing and hearing things, it's not only to see things, but eventually also think about the things that God has given, and also of course the message that God has sent, right? We should when we talk about the message or think about the message, we need to eventually determine and make a decision if we are going to choose a path. And of course, the best path is the path that God has shown us. and we read this every day in our prayers. We say, guide us in the right path, right? In Surah chapter 1, Al-Fatiha, we say this so many times, guide us in the right path. And there it says, the path of those who are blessed, right? Fear. 4. We prepared for the disbeliever chains, shackles, and a blazing hell. As for the virtuous, they will drink from cups spiced with nectar, a spring that is reserved for God's servants. It will gush out as they will. They fulfill their pledge and reference a day that is extremely difficult. So here God is giving us information about hell and heaven, but of course all these all the information that God has given is allegorical. So when he's talking about and saying things about chains, shackles, and a blazing hell, is for us to have some kind of an idea of what hell is, all right? But in reality, we can't really know what kind of a place it is, because it's a different dimension. It's a different world. It's not the same world as but God of course uses allegory to give us some kind of an idea, so we could understand what's going on and what is awaiting us. The same counts, of course, for heaven. He says, as for the virtuous, they will drink from cups spiced with nectar. So this tells us that, there are things that we are going to enjoy, of course, but those will be like things that we can't really imagine. And it's going to be very a good place. Like basically, that's what the whole idea is, right? There are only a few places where you can go. Actually, two places. It's either you are going to go to hell eventually, or it's going to be heaven. In 6, it says, a spring that is reserved for God's servants. It will gush out as they will. They fulfill their pledges and reference a day that is extremely difficult. So God tells us that we need to reference that day, right? We need to think about that day. We shouldn't live our lives randomly. We should, we need to have a plan, right? We need to plan our lives. And the messenger has taught us this, how we need to plan this. When we wake up until we go to bed again, we need to plan it, and we need to live accordingly. And one of the most important things, what I understood, is that he says, everything that you do for this world is going to eventually vanish. It's going to end. Like everything that you do for this worldly life, it's going to end and it's going to vanish. Um, and that's why that the things that we are doing in this life, it needs to be done for the hereafter, for our soul basically, and not for our garment, for this worldly life. Because the hereafter is eternal, and this life in this world has an end. And the messenger, if you go to his videos, he's explaining there, and he draws a point on the board, and he draws a line which represents infinite life. And the point is, this worldly life, let's say it's 100 years, and if you divide it, then basically it's zero. Like this worldly life compared to the hereafter, it's actually nothing. Like mathematically, it's even like zero. So that's why when we live our lives in this world, we need to have a plan. And this plan, the main idea of this plan should be that everything that we do, it should be done for our souls, to make sure that our souls grow, because that's the only thing how we would survive. And this is our last chance, right? In this world, God has given us a last chance, and we should use that chance to save our souls, God willing. And God tells us in 8, he says, they donate their favorite food to the poor, the orphan, and the captive. We feed you for the sake of God. We expect no reward from you, no thanks. We fear from our Lord a day that is full of misery and trouble. Consequently, God protects them from the evils of that day and rewards them with joy and contentment. So, one of the things that I really liked about this verse is that God says they donate their favorite food to the poor. So, like when we need to feed the poor, we shouldn't just give them and then I remember this day when the earthquake happened in Turkey, and a lot of people, they sent like so many clothes and so many, things to Turkey. And I remember so many people complaining about all these things that were sent. People just send their clothes, broken shoes, or like very strange things they have sent, right? So, and then that's not a good thing. Like when you help the poor, or like the orphans, we need to give them like from the good things, right? It shouldn't be like, and we shouldn't, of course, forget that these are people, right? These are human beings. Like they can feel very embarrassed. So we need to think about their feelings as well when helping the people, and not exaggerate or show off what a lot of people are doing. And in the Quran, God also tells us that, we should give to the poor, like we should help them, but it should, like it needs to be, the best is to do that actually secretly. If I'm not mistaken, God says that like we can help them openly, but secretly. But when you do it secretly, it's better. And one of the other important things here is the words that are being said, right? He said, "We feed you for the sake of God. We expect no reward from you, nor thanks." So, anytime when we help someone, we should, if they want to help us, we should definitely tell them that they shouldn't thank us. It is God who they need to think, who they need to thank, because eventually everything that they receive is actually from God and not from anyone else. We fear from our Lord a day that is full of misery and trouble. Consequently, God protects them from the evil of that day and rewards them with joy and contentment. Like those people who do the things, the commandments, they follow the commandments of God, because God says, feed the poor and the orphans. And when you feed them, don't do this to show off, and don't expect anything from them, right? Because like you have also people who help the poor, but then like they are doing that eventually to use them someday, right? They come to them and they say, "Listen, I help you a lot, so I need you to do something back, like something in favor for me." Um, but the only reason that believers do any things is only for the sake of God, because God is the only one who can protect us, right? And he says that in verse 11. Consequently, God protects them from the evils of that day, and God is the only one who can protect and rewards them with joy and contentment. And eventually, God is also the only one who can reward, right? He's the creator of the heavens, he's the creator of hell and heaven. So he's the one who's making decisions. So everything that needs to be done is, we need to do that for the sake of God, and we need to know that everything is from Him. We shouldn't ask any thanks from the poor, or we shouldn't expect anything in return. The only thing that we need to do is, ask God for forgiveness, and ask Him to protect us from that difficult day. He rewards them for their steadfastness with paradise and silk. They relax therein on luxurious furnishings. They suffer neither the heat of the sun nor any cold. The shade covers them the rain, and the fruits are brought within reach. They are served drinks in silver containers and cups that are translucent. Translucent cups, though made of silver, they rightly deserved all this. They rightly deserved all this. They enjoy drinks of delicious flavors from the spring rain known as salsabil. Serving them will be immortal servants. When you see them, they will look like scattered pearls. Wherever you look, you will see bliss and a wonderful dominion. Like it's really amazing to read all these verses, right? That even if we know it's allegorical, it gives us an idea. Like it's a very good, a nice place, like something that we really can't imagine. But still, like we get the idea, right? You get the idea that's like it's extremely nice. You get these fruits. It's like very luxurious. You stay there. You don't get even, it says about like they suffer neither the heat of the sun nor any cold. In this world, even if you're like very rich and you are so luxurious, etc., there is still things are not perfect like in heaven, right? um So even if you like lay down under the sun, it can burn you, right? So but you don't have these kind of fears in heaven, and God explains us about this. Like he said, like you don't have to worry about anything. There are servants, who will be serving you, and then if you want to drink something, you can just drink. He even gives the name, right? That's also very amazing. In 18 he says, from the spring therein known as the Salsabil. And inshallah, God willing, when we are there, we will see that, right? And then the thing that God's told us about when we were in the world, and we would definitely say like, oh, God told us about this salsabil, inshallah. In 19 it says, serving them will be immortal servants. When you see them, they will look like scattered pearls. Wherever you look, you will see bliss and a wonderful dominion. On them will be clothes of green velvet, satin, and silver ornaments. Their Lord will provide them with pure drinks. This is the reward that awaits you, for your efforts have been appreciated. Yeah, so like this is the reward, right? And God has sent us a book in which he explains us how we need to live, why we are here in this world, what we need to do, what are the things that we need to be careful with. And if we look in general, right, the things that God expects us doing is like praying 5 times a day, fasting, not lying, not cheating, being honest. All these things are very like it's actually not difficult to do, right? Like, why would God, why would God ask from us things that are like impossible, right? He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't ask us things that we cannot do. So everything that God tells us to do are definitely things that we can do. So this means that we wouldn't have any excuse, right? Like for example, even God, when he speaks about 5 times praying, he says like if you don't have, like if you're not able to pray the way how he taught us, we can even pray while walking, while standing, while laying down. And the messenger also tells us, right? He says, for example, when you're in the office and you don't have time anymore, you need to do your prayer, it's like loud, it doesn't matter, you can sit there and then pray with your mind, right, thinking about the movements and reading the verses. So like there is no excuse actually, because God has given us the information how to act in these certain moments. And he tells us, what kind of a thing awaits us if we would do if we would follow the commandments that God has given us. 23. We have revealed to you this Quran, a special revelation from us. You shall steadfastly carry out your Lord's commandments and do not obey any sinful disbeliever among them, and commemorate the name of your Lord day and night. This is also one of the verses that the messenger talks a lot about. And then he says, one of the things that he said about this, he says, he doesn't give a an amount, right? Like he doesn't say commemorate me 5 times a day or 7 times a day or 8 times. Like we need to commemorate God a lot. And he says, and commemorate the name of your Lord day and night. So we should definitely do that. And in 24, of course, we're reading that he says, you shall steadfastly carry out your Lord's commandments. Because only if we carry out these commandments sincerely, then we will be rewarded. And do not obey any sinful believer among them. So this is also very important, that we need to be careful, when following the commandments of God. We need to be careful about like these sinful disbelievers who will, bring doubts into the believers. Of course, we need to be careful with that, and I believe we are, of course. But still, God is reminding us how to do that. And like, there are also verses where people are going to blame each other, right? In the hereafter, they're going to say, "I just followed you, or you advised me to do this and to do that. It's because of you I am here." So that's why we should definitely be careful with that type of people. and commemorate the name of your Lord day and night. During the night, fall prostrate before him and glorify him many a long night. These people are preoccupied with this fleeting life while disregarding just ahead of them a heavy day. These people are preoccupied with this fleeting life, God says, while disregarding just ahead of them a heavy day. People are like definitely occupied with this world, especially in these days, right? People are so occupied with like money, fame. In social media, you see that people are living a different type of a life. They pretend as if they are extremely happy, in these videos and these pictures that they are showing, but in reality they aren't. And the only reason why they are doing is this eventually for this life that is going to end. And God gives the example. He says, how this life is that, first of all, it's extremely short, right? It's very short. If you would ask someone who is 95 years old, for example, how was this worldly life? Most of the people whom I know and whom I asked, like most of them, they said it was just like a blink of an eye. Like it was like yesterday. 70 years ago was like yesterday. Even ourselves, right? Like, for example, I am 38 years old, and if I think about 20 years ago, like, how did like 18 years pass by so quickly, so fastly? That's why we should be very careful with our time. Our time is extremely important and precious. Like, that's the most precious thing, actually, because as a submitter, we should use the time that God has given us to grow our souls. That should be the main goal. God has given me time, and hopefully, He will give me a lot of more time. The messenger also talks about this. He said, like a submitter should ask God to live a long life, because the longer you live, the more commandments you would follow that God has given, right? The more prayers you can do, the more poor people you can help, the more Quran you can read. Like you would do more of these things. So, and eventually, doing all these things are helping you growing your soul. So like the system that God has made here is like very simple, right? Like we live in this life, there is a reason why we are here. It's for a test. And we should be grateful that God has sent a messenger with this huge miracle, like one of the biggest miracles given to us, so we can have certainty, right? This miracle of 19, one of the things is it gives certainty. It's if someone has any doubts about this Quran, that this is from God, this miracle, it helps you remove that remove that from you, right? And then you get this certainty. Like, it's really amazing, and we should be grateful for that. And it's also important that we have this information. We know for certain what awaits us, what we need to do. God has sent a messenger who explained us how we need to live our lives, and how to do all these commandments. And also, very important, the things that we did wrong before we didn't know, right? For example, our prayers that we did all along before we became submitters, right? It was filled with idol worship, but we didn't know. When we sitting down, we read the Attahiyatu, right? We were reading that and then commemorating like others than God. We were reading the name of Muhammad, of Abraham's family and friends, Muhammad's family and friends, commemorating others than God, while clearly in the Quran, God was telling us, do not put any names next to God's name. Right, in chapter 72, verse 18, there it says, when you do your worship, when you're in the mosque praying, do not mention anyone else than God. But like most of the people who are saying and who are praying today in all these mosques, they are not following this commandment. So we are extremely lucky that we have this information, and we can do our prayers in the right way. And there was this there's this guy, whom I work with, and we went to one of these projects, and it was basically his house. He needed to do the renovation, and there, I was talking about this stuff, and I talked about it before, of course, but there we were alone, and while we were alone, we were, I had this opportunity to tell him more about it, and eventually we talked about, the prayers, and I explained to him how we need to do the prayers, and that we shouldn't put any names next to God, right? And then it was the afternoon prayer, and for the first time in his life, we did a prayer together, and like he didn't mention anyone else's name. It was only God, like one prayer that is only meant to worship God alone, and only his name is mentioned and no one else's. Like this is actually very special, right? Because why are we doing our prayers? The reason why we are doing it is to commemorate God. So the worship that we are doing is commemorating God. If you commemorate something else besides God, then actually, even without knowing, you are basically worshiping someone else next to him. And the messenger, of course, explains this to us. He says, like, even if you know that the person that you are mentioning is, for example, a messenger or a prophet, and you're saying, yeah, he is a slave of God, for example, it doesn't matter. God says, do not mention anyone else, only God, because the prayers should be only towards God, right? That's the reason why we are praying, to commemorate him. We created them and established them, and whenever we will, we can substitute others in their place. This is a reminder. Whoever wills shall choose the path of his Lord. Yeah, so this also tells us that if God wants, he can substitute others in their place, right? So, and we have seen that in the Quran. God speaks about, for example, the people of Lut, like what happened with them, or the people of Noah, or like the people of Ad, like so many people that were there. God sent a messenger. And there's also this topic that I would want to discuss, of course, is that God says that whenever he doesn't punish people if he doesn't sends a messenger. So only when he sends a messenger, and people who and if those people don't accept the message, and they keep on not accepting, and then most of the times they kill the messengers, right? They fight against them, and only then God punishes these people. So, but it's very easy for God to do that, right? He can decide to substitute others in their place. And in 29, it says, like, this is a reminder, whoever will shall choose the path of his Lord. And in the other verse that we have read, right there, he says, we showed him the two paths. Then he is either appreciative or unappreciative. This also reminds me of the things that the messenger said about submission, right? He says a submitter is someone who does not, who will not be unappreciative, because the moment that you're unappreciative, that means you are not submitting, because God is doing everything. And if you're unappreciative of something which is decided by God, right? So you are going against the will of God. And a submitter is someone who, in any case, like, it doesn't matter what the situation is always appreciative. Because all these decisions, all these things that are being done are done by God. So it's important that, and he also says that, like, a submitter should not be angry at all, because if you're angry, that actually means you're unappreciative, and this is something that God doesn't want. God wants and tells us that submitters are ones who are submitting to the will of God, are always appreciative, because we know and we understand that God runs everything and He's doing everything. 30. Whatever you will is in accordance with God's will. God is omniscient, wise. He admits whomever he wills into his mercy. As for the transgressors, he has prepared for them a painful retribution. So, one of the most misunderstood topics is that people think that God is the one who is sending people to hell. But we know, and we learn from the messenger and from the Quran, that actually people who are going to hell are the ones who are going by themselves. They are running towards hell. And the reason why they are going to hell is because they deserved hell. And God doesn't want to put one soul into hell. He doesn't want that, actually. But there is something like, giving all these souls, and that is what we understood, this freedom of choice. Like everyone can decide whether they choose the right path or the wrong path. And God has given this to us, right? To all these creatures, creations that He has created, He has given this free choice. And people who will go to hell, all of them are will go with their own free will. They will run towards hell. And the messenger also speaks about this. He says, the day when you would see them running towards hell, then you would clearly understand what this means, actually. Like, God is not sending them to hell, they are running themselves towards it. And God actually, He sends the messengers, He sends miracles, He sends books to teach people and to tell them that, they are running towards hell. Stop running towards hell. There is heaven, and in heaven, these are like these amazing things that awaits you if you follow the right path, if you do all these commandments eventually. And of course, God is the one who knows everything, and he knows who deserves to go to heaven, and who deserves to go to hell. So based on that information and knowledge of him, knowing that, he guides the ones who deserve to go to heaven. He guides them toward heaven. And one of the examples is Abraham, right? God says we knew who Abraham was. Like, he was one of these souls who deserved heaven. So everything that he lived his life in this world as a very good example, right? Like, the example where he was prepared to sacrifice his own child for God, because he thought that God commanded him to sacrifice him. God didn't want that, actually it was like the devil tricking him, and God saved Abraham, right? But we could see there this amazing example of a submitter who never was an idol worshiper, who is even prepared to sacrifice his own child for the sake of God. um, we go, and then this is chapter 77. It's called Dispatched El Mursalat. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. 1. Angels dispatched in succession to drive the wind, stir up clouds, distribute the provisions, deliver messages, good news as well as warnings. What is promised will come to pass. Thus, when the stars are put out, the sky is opened up, the mountains are blown up, the messengers are summoned. That is the appointed day, the day of decision. What a day of decision. Woe on that day to the rejectors. Did we not annihilate the earlier generations? Then we made others follow them. Yeah, so we learn, of course, we read this also yesterday, where, the angels, they have, each of them have their own role in this world. Like, and this is the explanation of what, for example, they are doing. It says, drive the wind, stir up clouds, distribute the provisions, and deliver messages. Like, um, we learn from the messenger and from the Quran that God is a physical being, and this world that God has created, it cannot stand the a physical being of God. And we learn this from the Quran, where Moses asks God to see him, but God tells him that he is not capable of seeing him. He cannot stand that. Like, it's impossible. But he insists on that, right? He really wants to see him. And probably because he's talking to God, he hears God's voice. And as a human being, you have, of course, this desire to see the person whom you're talking to. That's what I think, actually, why he was like insisting on seeing him. And God says, like, you can't bear that, right? Like the physical world, this our bodies, it's like impossible. And then God says to Moses to look at the mountain, and then God shows himself to the mountain, and the mountain shatters, right? And Moses, seeing the mountain in that state, he comes unconscious. And when he wakes up, then he immediately, bows down, and, as Like he understands that like it's really impossible. And in God's system, God created all these angels, of course, and they have like these things that they're doing. This is their basically their job, and God is controlling and doing all these things within that system using the angels, of course. And after that, God speaks about the day of decision, where it says, like, the sky is opened up, the mountains are blown up, the messengers are summoned. That is the appointed day, the day of decision. What a day of decision! Woe on that day to the rejectors! Woe on that day to the rejectors! Yeah, definitely. Like, people are rejecting the message. Like, even there are verses where these people they are saying, yeah, like if there's a retribution, send it down. Like if there's a retribution awaiting us, they are saying, do it faster, send it sooner. They are saying um, um, like so crazy actually. Like how dare you, right? And of course, the reason is because these people are wicked and extremely egoistic. Did we not annihilate the earlier generations? God gives us, of course, a lot of examples of the early generations. In Surah 7, we can read a lot of them. Like God explains us, the people of Lut, Noah, and all the previous generations that God repeats saying, we sent, actually, if let me see if I can read it. He says, we sent messengers to them, and they didn't listen. He says, for example, in 764, he says they rejected Noah and his message, and as a result, they were drowned in a great flood. In 772, they defied Hud's call to worship God alone, and the violent storm annihilated them. They rejected Saleh and slaughtered the she-camel, sent a divine sign. Consequently, a devastating earthquake wiped them out. They engaged in extreme immorality, and as a punishment, this is the people of Lut, and as a punishment, their town was turned upside down, and they were showered with stones. And Shuaib said they were dishonest in their trade and rejected God's messenger. A severe quake and the punishment known as the day of the canopy annihilated them. And of course, we have the Pharaoh. They arrogantly rejected Moses despite seeing clear signs. Like Moses showed so many signs, right? But despite seeing all these clear signs, as a result, Pharaoh and his army drowned in the sea. So clearly, in the Quran, we can see so many examples of God sending messengers and books and messages and showing like miracles. And in all these examples, the people who are rejecting the message are being annihilated, right? And why should this be a different case with Dr. Rashad, who came with like the biggest miracle? Like this miracle is different than the miracles before. The miracles before, they were all bound by time and the place, right? For example, the miracles that Moses has showed was like only the people at that time in that area who were, existent at that there, they could see the miracle, and then the miracle ended. Like it happened and then it ended. All these miracles that are taught to us in the Quran started and ended. But the miracle of 19, like it's endless. It's like until the end of this world. It's going to keep, it will always be there. And it doesn't matter where you live, which language you speak, language you speak, and in which time you are. Like even after 50 years, people still can see the miracle of 19. They can witness this miracle. And one of the other things of this miracle is it's like it approves the miracles that are in the Quran. So when you are reading in the Quran about the miracle that Moses has shown, it is as if you are currently there seeing the miracle because of this. And the messenger says the same, right? He says this. He says, like, you reading the Quran, knowing it's like designed with the miracle of 19, it's like the biggest miracle ever. This gives you, and I can speak with my own experience. Like when I'm reading that, because I know the miracle of 19, there is like extreme no doubt at all. It's like I am there at the moment, and I see Jesus. Like if that person is comes into life again. So like this is an amazing miracle, right? So why would this be different than all the other examples that God has given, since the messenger is being killed in 1990, right? He came with the message. He has shown the whole world the miracle, all the evidences. He was in this world for how many years? I don't remember exactly, but like for a long time, there were people, So, and most of the people, they rejected this 19. They rejected the messenger. Like some people, they didn't reject 19, but eventually they reject Rashad as a messenger, of course, because of their ego. But why would this time be different? Why wouldn't there be any punishment? And we are talking about this a lot lately, of course, about the Apophis, the asteroid that will hit the world. And the messenger has written about this in before he died, of course. And then he explained us that the asteroid will hit, and then there will be a dust cloud which will prevent sunlight hitting the earth, that kind of stuff. And this is going to be an annihilation, especially for the Arabs, because they are the main enemies of God. So, and this will come to pass. And, in the Quran, it clearly says it's not going to take a lot of time. Like soon, it's going to happen soon. Soon after a messenger is sent, if people reject the message, if they keep rejecting it and keep, fighting against it, then, this retribution will eventually come to them. So why should we be shocked, or is this kind of a surprise? It's not a surprise. It's very, if you look at all these examples before, when God has sent a messenger, you know it, like it's not different than that, right? 18. This is what we do to the criminals. Woe on that day to the rejectors. Did we not create you from a lowly liquid? In the footnote, or let me read more. Then we placed it in a well-protected repository for a specific period. We measured it precisely. We are the best designers. And in the footnote, it says, according to Langman's Medical Embryology by T.W. Sadler, fifth edition, page 88. In general, the length of pregnancy for a full-term fetus is 266 days, or 38 weeks after fertilization. Both 266 and 38 are multiples of 19. Appendix 1. So here God speaks about the embryo, of course, that, he gives us detailed information about how he created it. And one of the stages of that thing where he says, then we placed it in a well-protected repository for a specific period. And this specific period is a multiple of 90. So this is also, we have here a scientific miracle, but also this miracle is, a part of the miracle of 19. Who on that day to the rejectors? And of course, like, God is speaking about the topic, and then he gives this scientific evidence, and then he's telling us about the miracle, right? So this is like a very special way of writing a book. And only God could have done something like this, right? You're talking about the topic, you're telling us about like all this information, and then like out of nowhere you say, did we not create you from a lowly liquid? Then we placed it in a well-protected repository for a specific period. We measured it precisely. We are the best designers. Who on that day to the rejectors? Right? Did you not make the earth an abode for the living and the dead? We placed on it high mountains and provided you with fresh water to drink. Woe on that day to the rejectors. Go to what you used to disbelieve in. Go to a shade of three different densities. Yet it provides neither coolness nor protection from the heat. It throws sparks as big as mansions, as yellow as the color of camels. Woe on that day to the rejectors. That is the day when they do not speak, nor are they given permission to apologize. Woe on that day to the rejectors. This is the day of decision. We have summoned you and the previous generations. Yeah, so this verse is also like the chapter has 38 verses, it's a multiple of 19, and God speaks about that day, right? Like how difficult that is. While he's speaking about that, God speaks about the angel giving them these assignments that they are doing. They all have their own things that they need to do, and God speaks about like the creation and how he did it, that we need to think about these things. He gave us a mind, we need to look at all these things, and we need to be appreciative. So God willing, I will stop here. If I made any mistakes, may God forgive me, or if there are any things that you brothers and sisters want to add or ask, please go ahead.
MashaAllah. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, mashallah, but very amazing verses that we have read, like extremely amazing verses, mashallah.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, so um, there are a few things that like I want to ask actually, and maybe talk about. One of the things is like I also said in the study that there are so many examples of generations that came before us where God has sent messengers and prophets and books, and every time when it happened and they rejected the message, and they kept rejecting it and they kept fighting against it, like they were annihilated, right? So this means, and this is some kind of an evidence, at least to me, that we like a messenger is sent again. People didn't believe in him, so we can definitely say for 100% that an annihilation will come. And the messenger also tells us, right? He speaks about it. He says that the Arabs, they will incur this retribution. And this was also one of the questions that the guy whom we were talking about, he asked. He said, "Yeah, but this didn't happen every time when God sent a messenger." And he gave this example of Jesus, and he said, like with Jesus and with Muhammad, this didn't happen. But one of the things that, for example, when Moses went to Pharaoh and his people, the ones who were drowned were Pharaoh and his army. You had this other people who also rejected the message. They were left behind, right, in Egypt, because not all of these people, they came and they didn't follow Moses. It was Moses and his army. So those people, they didn't drown. And one of the other things is, this is what we learned from the messenger. Of course, he speaks about the gay people, and he says that, like, if I'm not mistaken, he says 1,000 years ago there was no AIDS. The AIDS disease is a new disease. It was, but you had gay people 1,000 years ago, right? But they didn't have AIDS. But today you have AIDS, and this disease takes specifically those people who are, following in that, doing that thing. So should we understand annihilation as like when it only happens to a whole group of people simultaneously in one place, or can we say this annihilation is, for example, in this specific example, as with gay people getting this AIDS disease and having a like very bad way of death, for example, right? At least at that time when they didn't had like it was new for them, and they didn't have these medicine to cure, because the message also says, right, that the devil is very doing his best to find the cure for AIDS. Right? He's also trying his best to help those people who followed him and doing this bad thing. Any things you brothers and sisters want to ask about this?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, brother.
Okay, so yeah, so actually, mashallah, it's a good question, and I think I hope there's not a lot of background noise.
No, brother, it's perfect, mashallah.
But Okay, mashallah, that's great because my heater is very noisy here. So, what I was saying, that it depends on the situation. For example, with the homosexuals, you have gay people living in the same neighborhoods as the straight people, right? So there's all mixture of these people or communities of people mixed together, right? So in those situations, like it doesn't make sense to have a group community annihilation, right? And so in those situations, we see like God says, like I mean, the messenger talks about how people are collectively annihilated through diseases like AIDS and stuff, right? There's good people and bad people mixed in together. But then you have example of people, for example, like the Arabian Peninsula, where you have these entire communities of people that are completely, you know, have are dismissed by God and forsaken by God completely. So those are going to be the ones that are going to be annihilated as a group, like with the smoke and Apophis.
Yeah, and I want to add, brother, there's this verse we also read yesterday. It's where, you know, if someone is doing a bad thing, giving them the right to do is, we should talk them out of it, right? And
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, this verse, it was like also punishing the people who are being silent about it, right? So they were also in that
Right.
group with annihilation. So you have also that type of thing going on.
Yeah, you have people who are condoning it.
Yes, right. Yes, that's it, brother.
Hmm.
So when you have a community, and let's say submission, and the Quran is like the basic book which people should follow. And if there are any gay people, like, should we force them not to do it, or like, is it, mm, should we only
Force
talk?
them. What do you mean force them?
Because we should force them not to do it, you say?
No, why should we force them? You shouldn't force anybody to do anything. There's no
Yeah, but
compulsion in religion.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But I want to understand, because the messenger says, you are not doing them, you are not helping them by giving them their so-called rights.
So you're not supposed to force anybody, right? You're supposed to
Yes.
talk to them. You're supposed to talk them out of it, try to convince them, but you don't force anybody. Forcing is, I tell you like, hey, do this or you're gonna go to jail.
Okay,
That's
so
forcing.
yeah, so we don't force them. We talk to them and we try to help them out of it. But if they still insist on
Hmm.
doing it, this is also like a very bad
They
example
can
for our
do.
children, for example, right? So is there anything
No, I
like
mean, if
should?
someone wants to commit idol worship, that's worse than anything, for example, right?
Hmm.
But everybody has their maximum freedom of religion, right? So if
Yes.
anybody wants to do that, if anyone wants to commit adultery, if anyone wants to take intoxicants, it's the same thing.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, so like, for example, if you have a gay neighbor, or is my thing going on? Oh, I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, brother.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Then it's Suleiman who is cut off.
Thank- Yeah.
Okay. Okay, he's gone. Um, yeah, so like what I understand is, so like, for example, we live in a community. These people are like, they're free to do, of course, what they want to do, unless, they are trying to hurt someone, right? If they are hurting someone, then like we need to protect those people, of course. But this means that, you can have a neighbor who is gay, and then we should always try to help them by talking them out of that situation. But if they insist on doing that, then Like we need to leave them by what they're doing.
Right.
Is that what we?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, like we can do our best to talk them out of it and give it time. But I mean, this goes for even your parents. I mean, this is something that I mean every believer or submitter that claims to be a believer and submitter is going to have to go through at some point, whether it's a relative or whatnot. And you can give them the message, and it might take time, might take a couple years, but if they insist on going to hell, I mean, if you look at, I just read it this morning, I think it's verse 113 of, I forget what surah, but
Sure.
if they insist on going to hell, then they're, you've done your part, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so, same thing, I mean, with a homosexual, you can come to them with kindness and compassion, but if if they want to run off the cliff, then let them. Because at some point, if you don't, if you're still trying to reach your neck out for these people, whether they're your relatives or your friends or enemies of God, they're gonna take you with them somehow. You know, you're going to grab them and they're falling off the cliff, and you go right there with them. So I mean, that's the
Mm-hmm.
whole like logic behind. I mean, why we're not supposed to befriend enemies of God? Like once they've professed their disbelief and there's no hope for them. So like
Mm-hmm.
the same can be, I believe, said for someone of that nature. And I mean, we would hope that they believe, and maybe they do. Like after down the road, but God knows that He's in charge of the guidance. But as long as we do our part,
Mm-hmm.
that's what's important.
Yeah, because eventually, if they're not going to accept it, they will not accept the message, and yeah, so then yeah, we need to distance ourselves from them, right? If they keep on doing that, you're talking with them, you're trying to help them, like you did your best, and you eventually come to conclusion that they are not going to change. Um, yeah, so this also means that they are not accepting the message. So we need to distance ourselves from them.
Yeah, essentially, because
Hmm.
they've chosen, like God says, I mean, they've chosen misery and hardship over happiness, essentially. But I mean, they don't see it like that, you know. But uh, yeah, with distance, I mean, if you have to, from my understanding of like what we've talked about in the past, I mean, if you have to associate with this person out of necessity, like let's say you work with them or something. I mean, that's, you just keep it formal and cordial.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But if out of necessity, because I mean, you have no choice, or like if or if
Keep it very formal, right?
yeah, I mean that's the way I've
Hmm.
done in the past.
Because it's also a very bad example for children, right? Like all these people doing these things. It's a very bad example.
Yeah, it is, and I mean we have to teach our children too. That this stuff is wicked, perverted, and evil. Because if you don't, I mean, it's I read the verse I think this morning too. It says there. Well, let me just read it. Um, they're forbidders of evil. You know. So it says, Sir 9 ultimatum, verse 112, the believers, they're the repenters, the worshipers, the praisers, the meditators, the bowing and prostrating, the advocators of righteousness, and forbidders of evil, and the keepers
Mm-hmm.
of God's laws. Give good news to such believers. So, we have to, for
Forbidders of evil.
yeah, we
Yeah.
have to, like examine ourselves. I mean, every one of us, this is something good. We have to look at within ourselves and make sure, are we doing these things? Are we tallying up to what these traits?
Hmm. Definitely.
Mashallah, good questions. You know, it's good to talk about and remind each other
Mm-hmm.
of this stuff.
Yeah, mashallah, brother. Yeah, like the verses that we have read, like so amazing verses talking about so many different topics, and also some kind of a summary. When you read these verses, you can clearly see like a summary of, God it speaks about the hereafter, the angels, these very important things in such a small chapter, even, right? There was also the thing that I wanted to ask about 25. 76, 25, it says, and commemorate the name of your Lord day and night. During the night, fall prostrate before him and glorify him many a long night. So I actually asked a similar question to Brother Suleiman. And when we talk about the night, like glorifying him and doing fall prostrate before him, is this like for example the night prayer that we are doing, or is this a prayer like falling prostrate before him during the night? Is this between the night and the dawn prayer? Like, is there also a time period where, a specific time period where we should be awake, commemorating him, falling a prostrate? And follow prostrate doesn't mean only doing the 5 daily prayers, right? It's also, commemorating him by, at that time. And it says also, and glorify him many a long night. Like, what should we understand from long night? Like, what I understand myself at this moment is like, you have, of course, the night prayer. This is sometimes early, sometimes it's late, right? Sometimes it's like around, for example, what is it now? Uh, it starts at 7:37 p.m. Like, this is very early compared to the summers. Then it's like much later, right? So, and then there is a lot of time from the night prayer until you go to bed, and then you wake up again for the dawn prayer. So you could use this time in between to like glorify him for long nights. That is right now what I understand. But is there something else? Like, is it like very late at night after 12 p.m., for example? Or maybe just before dawn prayer?
Yeah, I have pretty much the same understanding. Like I mean, we know that night starts at sunset and ends at, I believe, sunrise, as the messenger said. But also, I think you brought up a good point. Like, I mean, even if we get up to use the bathroom or something in the middle of the night, we can just right before we go back to bed. I mean, we can like kneel down and pray or something,
Or
or
commemorate him, just
yeah,
commemorate him even.
remember, and
Mhm.
like for 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, or the longer the better, or something. But yeah, I think that's pretty much, yeah, any time during the night.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
maybe if you
this is a
work night shift,
commandment,
you're lucky.
brother. Yeah.
Huh?
And this is like a clear commandment. Like he said, and commemorate the name of your Lord day and night. During the night, fall prostrate before him and glorify him many a long night. Like, of course, and then after this, he says, these people are preoccupied with this fleeting life while disregarding just ahead of them a heavy day. So, by commemorating God a lot, day and night, you keep yourself like then you are not preoccupied with this life, right? You're more occupied with commemorating God. And that's the reason why God wants to do that, right? To commemorate Him and not be preoccupied with this worldly life. And then you have, of course, these long nights, and that is what I understood from long night. In the winters we have a long night, and in the summers the night is actually much shorter. And if you think about the time, like now the night prayer started, there is a lot of time,
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
prostrate again and
Uh-huh.
to commemorate God.
That makes sense.
still when it's night. Yeah.
Yeah, because that makes sense. Because I mean, it's the longest part of the night. But
Mm-hmm.
um, but I mean, yeah, any time, any. But yeah, like I think didn't we read recently? I think the verse that says that meditation at night is more righteous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like
Okay.
more
Yeah.
quiet.
Yeah, more quiet and
Yeah.
like we can
Also,
focus better too. Oh, I think it's somebody. It's Suleiman. I
yeah.
think
I
I
was
Sorry,
just
heard.
gonna say. Also, can
where
you
is
guys hear
Suleiman?
me?
Where are you?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah, we
yes.
can.
Yeah,
Audio.
brother.
All right. So, yeah. Also, also, the messenger of the covenant talks about in one Quran study where he says that if you misunderstand this, um, you will end up, staying awake all night, meditating or commemorating God. But he says like sunset, and I'm paraphrasing, so I would encourage everybody to go and go to the studies where he talks about this and listen to it. But he says that it starts at sunset. So your sunset prayer, your time for anticipation of night prayer, and including your time of anticipation for the dawn prayer, all of those things are counted in your remembrance of God, during this time. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stay awake all night and commemorate God, you know, not not to say that you can't, you know, but I would encourage everybody to go and listen to it themselves
Yeah,
and
but
come to their own
the
conclusion.
verse is a commandment of God, right? He says, "And commemorate the name of your Lord day and night. During the night, fall prostrate before Him and glorify Him many a long night." So I remember you, saying things about this too, and that, this night is also the night prayer. When He says, "Fall prostrate before Him," is like the night prayer is a part of this commandment. Actually, that's what I understood actually from that.
So I'm
And
just
and the
curious.
reason,
Have
brother,
you?
yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
let
yeah.
me. Okay, and the reason is like when before I became a submitter, like because I'm from a Sunni, like my parents and like everyone else, there is this specific prayer that they do after the night prayer. They wake up at the night to do a prayer, and that prayer they say it's this prayer where God commands us to do a night prayer besides the fifth prayer.
hmm Yeah, I'm just curious. Have you gone through that study that I'm referring to? Have you ever heard it before?
Which one, brother? Okay.
The one I just mentioned about where the messenger says, if you misunderstand this, you will end up meditating
Yeah,
or
yeah.
staying up all night remembering God. So how do you understand? How do you understand that?
Yeah, the way how you explained, I understand it like that.
Like how
Yeah, yeah,
how do you
no,
understand how I?
yeah. Before I understood it differently. I thought we need to wake up at nights and then, specifically do this commandment. But then, like
Right.
at that time, you also explained this to me. I remember that. So, but this
Uh-huh.
was like, and this verse was that verse that I was reading. So this is how I understood it. But then I said, I
Uh-huh.
asked this question to Suleiman, and then he also told me that the night prayer is like is part of that commandment. It's the night prayer that we are doing. And of course, besides
Mm-hmm.
that, the night prayer in the winters it starts early. In the summers, it's later, much later. So, for example, here
Right.
the night prayer starts at 7:37 p.m. So this means I still
Yeah.
have a lot of time until I go to sleep, and I can use that time like to prostrate and to commemorate God.
You right.
Yeah.
So the expression "many a long nights."
Hmm.
So like many long nights is a way of saying like many long nights. So
Hmm.
like I could say like a many a long night. was studying for the exam, like so and so, or he endured
Mm-hmm.
many a long night working on his project. So it doesn't mean that he only worked on his projects during the summer or the winter, right?
Mm.
Because I know we
Many
make
long
reference
nights
to
he
this.
did that.
It means that he spent a lot of time at night doing something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not talk about short night versus long nights.
And the
Mm,
night
okay.
and the night starts in sunset, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ends at sunrise, right?
So between sunset and dawn, you have a long time. Yes.
Does it
We
end
have
at dawn or does it end at sunrise? I forgot. I think it ends at sunrise, right? Or no?
mm, yeah, we have also a saying
No.
in Turkish.
Night ends at dawn.
Mhm.
Night
Oh, it
ends
ends
at
at
dawn.
dawn. Okay.
Yes. Like that's why we have the night of destiny,
Hmm.
which finishes at dawn, right? So dawn ends at sunrise.
Right. I thought the night prayer included dawn, or no? Or no, it didn't. Yeah, okay.
Night prayer
I think
included
I might
dawn.
have
Night
misheard.
prayer goes on up until before dawn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought. I mean, I really thought I heard. I could be wrong. I have to, but I thought I heard it was from sunrise to sunset, or I mean, sunset to sunrise. That's the terminology I heard. But we'll just say I'm wrong,
No.
just to. But
Yeah. Yeah.
search for it.
I'm. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah, then it
not what
wouldn't.
was.
But no, I mean, if it started, we can't. Because I mean, if night starts at sunset, then you can see. We can't say dawn. I guess
Mhm. Yeah.
because if night starts at sunset, that includes the sunset prayer we can do. So I think, man, I think
Mm.
it's. Uh, I have to look at that.
No, night. Well, night begins at sunset. Yeah. Yeah. Night doesn't begin at nighttime, right? For example,
Yeah, that's what I
you
said. I
start the
said
night
it begins at sunset, and I thought I heard it. I thought I heard it was from sunset to sunrise, but the
sunrise.
sunrise
Yeah.
part I
It's
could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure. Or
Yeah,
I could be wrong. I have to look.
so
But
we have the sunset prayer, right? We pray when sunset happens, and then mostly 1 or 1.5 hour after that, the night prayer starts. Am I wrong?
hmm?
Yeah, so brother, we do a prayer when the sun sets, right?
Uh-huh.
And then after
Right.
1 or 1.5 hour afterwards, most of the times 1 hour, 1.5 or 2 hours, I think, like at least in the area where I live, then the night prayer
Hmm.
starts.
The night prayer starts, but the
Yeah.
night and day, we're talking about day
Okay.
and night, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Two things, day and night. So
Oh, these are two
day
different
is,
things.
yeah, so day is from dawn,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sunset.
From the
Night is from
two
sunset.
sides of the day.
Yes. So there's
Mm-hmm.
day and there's night. The
Yeah,
difference
yeah.
between what I'm saying and what you're saying is day and night. Like there's only
Mm-hmm.
two things.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
divide the day into two parts, basically. Just it's like black and white, you know. There's
Mm-hmm.
black at from dawn to sun. Basically, the time that the sun is, so the light is there.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the well, kind of. It's not exactly right, as we know, but based on the
Yeah.
Quran, is how we can understand it. Like night begins at sunset and ends at dawn,
Mm-hmm.
which
okay,
is why
so yeah, brother
our night
Abdullah,
destiny.
yeah, I think I was correct. He said he shared the verse, or not a verse, but from audio one. So the day begins at sunrise. That's what I was saying, because the night is from sunset to sunrise.
And the messenger talks about it.
Uh huh.
So 9 to 5, you already
No, so
covered a
I
good
think
portion of the
maybe
night.
there's probably uh, two different places where he's talking about it, because he's also in another place he's also talking about uh, what I'm saying. So I think we should look up
Yeah,
both of them,
Abdullah
right?
shared. Abdullah shared one.
First,
It's from
there's
audio
one
one
where he's
himself.
saying he's talking about sunrise, right? So it says Quranic night starts at sunset, and basically we're talking about sunrise now, right? So
But he said
the one he's
day
talking about
begins at
night
sunrise. I
starts.
think you had said it begins at dawn. That's what I think he was sharing. I'm
Right.
I'm
So
starting.
Mm.
No,
sorry, what?
no, I'm starting to get I'm starting to get confused now. Because I thought I heard. I thought I heard from sunset to sunrise. That maybe this is what I heard
So
right
night
here.
So
starts
what does
at
the messenger
sunset.
say?
It's
What does the
audio one.
messenger say?
I mean, he says right there. He says,
You're commemorating God when you pray the sunset, when you pray the night, when you mention the name of God before you sleep, when you get up for dawn prayer. You already covered the half of the night like that because the night begins at 7 o'clock. It's sunset right now. We pray the night at 9 o'clock. We get up to 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock for the dawn prayer, 5 o'clock.
yeah. So
Okay.
maybe it does. Maybe night does begin like ends at dawn, like Suleiman was saying. But dawn is just dawn, and then the day begins at sunrise. Maybe I'm understanding it like that. Is that correct?
Like I remember about
Right.
dawn is when you have this line with God speaks that you can we spoke about this in the month of Ramadan. The rope, yes, it was the rope, where God says, when you can, please help me. I don't really remember exactly the verse, but God is talking about the black rope or the white rope, so you can make a distinguish between the black and white rope. Or it
I
was
think
the
I think it was
horizon,
thread.
horizon.
Was it thread maybe
No,
or
not red.
rope? No, thread like
The thread, yes.
THREAD.
Yes,
Yeah.
brother. I'm sorry. Yeah, thread. Excuse
Yeah,
my English.
because even in this, what Abdullah put, it's not saying that the dawn is night. You know.
Right. Yeah. So I think dawn is like from sunset, from what the messenger says, from sunset to dawn, and then the dawn is just dawn, and then sunrise begins. I mean, the day begins at sunrise. I think that's right.
So what I
Uh,
understand is you have two things, right? We should separate them. One is day and night. The day is when sun start, when you see light coming in, until when light goes away. That's the day. And the night
right.
starts eventually in these two ends, like we are speaking about that, right? But the other thing is you have the prayer times. So you have the night prayer time, which starts, of course, at night after, um, uh, um, in this period of night, right? Because we have the sunset prayer, and like around 1.5, 2 hours later, we do the night prayer. But the night already started with sunset, right? Because you have day and night, so night already started because it's not day anymore. And then the dawn prayer is also before the sunset, before sunrise. We don't do the dawn at sunrise, we do it before sunrise. And the dawn prayer ends actually when the sunrise starts to happen, right? So this means that the night prayer and dawn are done actually at night because it's not day. There is no light.
Right. Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah.
there's the night and the day. There's just two, like
Hmm.
night, day, and then one has a start, one has an end. But yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
based on what it's saying, it's looks like it starts at sunset, uh,
Yeah.
and
And
then
Yeah, so I
someone
mean,
may think that this
night
is not
prayer,
important.
Night ends at dawn, though, right?
night prayer ends at dawn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Night
prayer
prayer
yes,
ends. The prayer
ends at
ends by dawn. Yeah, the prayer, but
yes,
not night
yeah.
itself.
So and Well, the night of destiny, what does the surah say about the night of destiny? Peaceful it is until the advent of dawn.
Okay.
So that means that night ends at, so the night of destiny ends at dawn, right?
Okay.
Because
Yeah, because dawn is just
because
dawn,
the verse,
I think.
because God says the night of destiny says peaceful it is until the advent of dawn.
Okay.
So we can just simplify that. Um, it's possible that that part where maybe it's like how he says for the for this morning prayer versus like dawn prayer. He says morning prayer, then says I want to correct myself. It's not morning prayer; it means dawn prayer. So maybe because I know he also spoke about it, right? In addition to the verse from the Quran, he actually speaks about it somewhere. And now, if we have all the transcripts, God willing, it will be easier for us to look at that also. But um, we know the night, technically, from like, especially from the night of destiny. So, the night of destiny is a night just like any other night. Uh, but I mean, of course, it's a special night, but it ends at dawn based on the verse. And we know that when we commemorate God, we finish our commemoration at dawn, because we know that that was the
Okay.
night of
That,
destiny.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, bro, that's very clear. But the question
Yeah.
is, and I find it important because, God speaks about it, the messenger speaks about it, so it shouldn't be like we are discussing a topic which is actually, some may say why, it's not important, but it is. So,
No, it's important.
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
say it's
So,
important. Yeah.
yeah. No, I'm not saying you I'm not saying you're doing that,
I'm
Suleiman.
not saying because I'm usually telling you
No, no,
a
no, no,
lot
no,
of
no, no. No, no, no. No, no, no. So, sometimes we talk about these topics and then, someone may think it's not really important, but since God
Mhm.
speaks a lot about day and
Yeah.
night and all these times, and
Yeah.
the messenger too, right?
It's
So
important for us to
please,
understand the difference between day and night.
yeah, please correct. Yeah, but Suleiman, this helped me because I remember when I was doing the Ramadan, I stopped
Hmm.
eating. I stopped eating.
Salam alaikum.
Salam.
I think I think somebody when they left, they accidentally maybe who
Yeah,
was here first.
who
They
was
yeah
the first
they
one?
they, they
Yeah,
hit the red button.
maybe, brother. Maybe they thought this topic is not so important. Just
Yeah, maybe so.
yeah, yeah. That's why I was saying no. Like it's
Maybe there's
important.
better stuff to talk about. I don't know. I don't want to say it's not, but
Yeah, yeah. But this was the Ramadan time when, I just like I couldn't figure out. Like, and then eventually I asked Suleiman, I said, Suleiman, like this is like I need to know what is the right time. And you can go to the internet on NASA's website or even with an application, or even if you have the Apple Watch, for example. Like I have this the time face on my watch where you can clearly see the how do you say, the stages, because it's not only one stage, right? There is this stage where light starts to come, and that's the moment when the dawn prayer starts. So, and I just couldn't understand what God meant by the thread, right? When you have the black thread and the white thread, so the time when you can distinguish that. But it was like basically talking about the stage where light starts to fall into the night, and then you stop eating, and then you can start doing your dawn prayer. So that's why it's actually important, right? Because God decided to command us to give us the dawn prayer at that specific time. So we should be able to know that time. And if you look at, for example, people who lived 500 years ago, those people, they were like, how should they know what time it is, when to pray? Right, when they don't have a watch or a clock or something, so they were like looking at the sky, right, seeing, okay, so light is coming in, so okay, this means it's time for dawn, so we stop eating and we start doing our dawn prayers. And that's something what, you know, Suleiman taught me when it was Ramadan.
Mashallah. Any other comments about the subject? All right. I don't know if you guys are talking about it because I can't hear anybody. Um.
I
Yeah, we
think
just
Brother
finished him.
Jaffer just finished.
Okay.
That was good clarification for us.
All right. So, are there any other off-topic questions anyone has?
I don't think we went over verses though.
Oh,
I
really?
think. Yeah, I mean, well, this was part of the
I
verse,
was
though. I
coming in and
think.
out, so I wasn't able to.
Yeah. Yeah, because no, this
Let's
is
go.
actually, I
Let's
think
go.
Brother Jaffer had brought up verse 25. That's how we started
Mhm,
talking about that.
mhm. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just gonna say I like. Or I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go.
Oh, I was just gonna say I like the verse 27. These people are preoccupied with this fleeting life. Excuse me. While disregarding just ahead of them a heavy day. And like the verse, a few verses after verse 29, I like it because it says, "This is a reminder: whoever wills shall choose the path to his Lord." So yeah, it's like really a blessing not to be preoccupied like most people, but it can still happen to us. So it's a good. I like it in the sense how it's a really good reminder for everyone, including us, to remember what's important. You know.
Yeah, and then God speaks about that day, the day of decision, right? This is what God is referring to. Do I understand that right? A heavy day. And then in the next chapter, 77, talks about that, the day of decision.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I mean, there's so much wisdom in the Quran, if you, when we really think about it. And then I never thought about, the verse, I think, with the mountains, that we discussed, I think, like last month, about how they would crumble if a Quran was revealed to them, because that really says a lot about, kind of like some of y'all shared about, how the human being is given something with so much wisdom and enlightenment, but most people, I mean, even us, if we're not careful, we can fall into like not appreciating. I mean, I know we as submitters, we appreciate it, but we have to really go above and beyond, I think. I mean, if we want to make it, um, and like apply all the wisdom in the Quran. Yeah, because there's so much, there's so many. Every topic is pretty much talked about. That's what makes it so great too. Like nothing is left out, and it just
Yeah,
adds
mashallah.
to the. And I mean, it's like when you're reading it or listening to it. I mean, it's I mean, even if itself without the miracle of 19, I mean, I think someone that is gonna believe anyway. Like if they're gonna believe in 19, even without 19, uh, they should take a liking to it. If I'm saying that, or if I'm making sense, like they should find, kind of like how the verse I think says, I think it's in Surah 16, but it says like when they hear, what do you think about, or when they're asked, what do you think about these revelations? The good people say, or the people that submit and believe, they say, what do you think about these revelations? They say good, like so they're gonna naturally uh, like what's in here and not find anything.
Even the
That's,
jinns, right? In chapter 72, brother, they say, we just heard an amazing Quran. Like, this is really amazing. And even we, when we are reading the Quran, like, it's so, when you read it, like, you are stunned by the things that's written there. And imagine people who are reading this and not being, like, impressed by it. Like, it's so strange. You think, how is this even possible that if you have read this, if you read these verses and you're not like this is really amazing. So this also shows that no one will have any excuse, especially after the miracle of 19. Like it's like there is no way out, like impossible. God made this like very special system. You read it, it's amazing. Even in Arabic, when you read it, it's different, right? In English, of course, we read it and we understand it, but when you read it in Arabic, the way how it sounds, it's also very amazing, like in a poetic way, because at the time when the message, when Prophet Muhammad the Quran was revealed to him, the Arabs were the first ones who heard the Quran, and at that time, linguistics was like a big thing. So, and them, and them hearing the verses that Muhammad was reading to them, and not accepting is what I think basically, it is impossible not to be impressed by such a book unless you are not sincere and like there is hell written down on your forehead.
yeah, mashallah. I think Brother Abdullah posted comment from YouTube. Should we navigate carefully with kids because we're all bound to sin after we mature from adolescence? And so, as parents, we should do as the Quran teaches and be an example of righteousness. Yeah, of
Brother,
course, definitely. Like,
well,
invite them to pray. I mean, like Messenger talked right good about. He talked about that. It's in the Quran. How we should enjoin our families to observe the prayer. And
yeah,
then for the next question, I think Suleiman, or both questions, Suleiman can also give his input.
when you said Abdullah asked the question, I was like, what, Abdullah has kids?
Yeah. Wait for it. You thought he had kids?
And who is Peter? And Navid is the same Navid we know. And who's Peter?
Yeah, so we don't collab with Peter and Naveed because
Oh, the Navid is the one that we know, right? That guy.
yeah, and Peter is
Oh, okay.
they're Naveed and Peter, they're like together, on
Yejuj and Majuj. Oh no, okay.
Mhm.
yeah. So they're basically
This is a
they
joke.
basically, run this group together.
Mhm.
Yeah, Heckle and Jekyll. I was going.
Yeah,
And
like I wonder how many people are there now. Like the great group, the amazing great group with thousands of people, maybe. I don't know.
yeah,
The
great
bigger the group,
grand Quran study.
the bigger the group, brother, the more amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, so the thing is, we don't collaborate with them on a serious note. We don't collaborate with them, and they promote some very false ideas, including one of the most prominent lies that say that circumcision was given to Abraham by God, and that God commanded Abraham to circumcise at the age of 99, and himself, without any anesthesia, his kids, his tribe, and his servants. Such a barbaric thing was never given to Abraham. Quran has the complete details of our religion and our practices, and there's no mention of it. And no matter how they try to twist it and try to make people think that they don't believe it, they actually believe it, and they have posted it on their blog website. So if you want to verify it, and you can ask them, and they shamelessly lie about it to your face that they don't believe it's a part of the religion, and then they promote it as some twisted form of a part of religion, and connecting it to Abraham, and they deceive people based on that, So there's definitely no collaboration.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, should be very simple. Like for people, I mean, eventually, if they haven't, eventually, hopefully they'll come around to seeing that. But if it's not in the Quran, we don't accept it. I mean, this was in the Messenger's third conference. It was in his principles for Friday prayer, I believe. It was that video. Any other sources? And he specifically says the traditions and customs from previous scriptures. He said, if you go to anything other, these are his words, if you go to anything other than the Quran, by definition, you're committing shirk, idol worship. And let me just clarify, like those were close to what he was saying, but he used specifically traditions, customs, and previous scriptures. So, I mean, it should be real simple, God willing, for people.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
Just to clarify.
if you're too young to understand the reference of Heckle and Jekyll, maybe Dumb and Dumber.
No, I know the Heckle and Jekyll. Yeah, my dad used to use that reference. The little Heckle and Jekyll. He used to call me.
But what's wrong with Yajuj and Majuj?
Well, those are communities. These are characters.
Maybe they represent them. How more clear could the messenger be, right? Like it's like when you watch these videos where he's talking about, especially in the interview, right? Like so clear. Like what else can you say? Like Quran, only Quran, nothing but the Quran, fully detailed.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
They're saying like, no, it's not a covenant. It's not a commandment. It's a covenant.
I mean, imagine they're following stuff too. That's like
this covenant to do what? To do.
We have everything mathematically coded too. That we had the covenant, the true covenant, the only covenant, the covenant that was given in the Quran, the final testament, all the sources. That's mathematically coded. Like that's what God tells us to follow and uphold the Quran, and don't uphold anything else or go to any other sources. And if you do, you're falling into the same trap as the Mohammedans, because some of these submitters think they're so righteous, they're so smart, but I mean, it's unfortunate, but they're doing the same thing. It's like history, the old saying, there's nothing new. Solomon said this, there's nothing new under the sun. And in this part, I think humans just came up with, but history repeats itself, Okay, Abdullah posted something. Do you want to read it, brother?
Yeah, he posted. So you're saying that Naveed and Peter promotes circumcising? Just wondering sincerely. Again, comment from YouTube. Yeah, they do, and they have an article on their website that is proof of that. And if you ask them, do you promote it, and they will say no. So, but when you go to their website, they promote it, and if you ask them to take it down, they'll refuse to take it down. So they do promote it, but they don't want you to think that they do it.
Yeah, because the thing is, their whole idea is to gain as much people as possible. Like they're all about numbers. The more they are, like their numbers is for them an evidence that they are right. They think, okay, we are right because we have this great Quran
Your
studies with so many people
and
joining us,
not
like
Yeah, I
that's
mean it's compromise, and it's just like the Quran says and
no,
warns about this throughout the Quran, not to acquiesce to the people's wishes.
yeah,
Like many people do that, and give up their like convictions. And reality is like it says in Surah 6. I mean, these people never had, like, God will bring out their true convictions. So these people are thus exposed by these means of circumcision, by these things that I really think. I mean, after a lot of time and just reflecting on this stuff, I really think it was specifically. I mean, God's running everything. This stuff was not mentioned like verbatim ABC 1, 2, 3 at the time of the messenger of the covenant, because he didn't need to be, first off, because it's not in the Quran. Like the messenger says, this is the way. He doesn't need to tell you, don't take these 100 million routes or paths that lead to hell. He'll just, okay, this is the path to heaven. So, or paradise and redemption. So in the same way that it's I think it's a test for people, for those who harbor doubts in their hearts. That God alone is not enough. The Quran alone is not enough, and those who actually believe in the messenger and what he
yeah.
brought.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
So
no, that's okay. I'm done.
I have a question for Melissa. So what does DTI stand for?
That's an interesting question. I was wondering the same thing. Maybe that's like some initials.
Debt to Israel, no? Oh,
Google says Department of Trade and Industry. Yeah, it could be like a business or something. But yeah, plus,
I thought about Istanbul first before Israel.
Yeah, the stuff we mentioned, but I think it's important too to please, Brother Suleiman, is that video on circumcision with the Harvard professor, who's also Jewish, is that video up on God Alone TV?
He wasn't a Harvard professor. He worked at Harvard.
He worked at Harvard, okay.
In some other capacity, but he was a graduate of Harvard, is what I understand. Physics,
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good video for people to supplement this.
Eric,
just to
something. Yeah. So and also first of all, to be a submitter and to be a monotheist submitter, you have to follow and uphold Quran alone, and the Messenger of the Covenant has clearly outlined that. If someone wants to put it on the messenger, for example, and say, well, he didn't say anything, so I'm not going to follow what you're saying. The messenger of the covenant has clearly, in his last sermon from the final conference, his last speech, he said that, if it's not in the Quran, don't accept it. People are going to try to divert you. Especially, he says, Satan's point of view is going to represent it in this masjid, meaning Masjid Tucson, people from, obviously representing this mosque, people representing this group, us. People are going to promote stuff other than the Quran, and their views, the people will try to, promote Satan's point of view. And if you listen to them, you deserve to listen to them. But, our principle is simple. If it's not in the Quran, I don't accept it. Is there a link she can download? You can send? I think it's in description. Yes, it is in description. She can download the submission app, Godwin. It's in the link for the video on YouTube if we're watching on YouTube. And then also the messenger of the covenant. Also, you have to understand that, how the messenger of the covenant talks about, what's satanic or what's a sin. When there's a victim, he described it, as when there's a victim, there's a sin. And we're talking about Satan verbatim promising God that I will command them, I will promise them, meaning a covenant, like I'll promise them like fake promise, right? Fake covenant. I'll command them to distort God's creation, So mutilation of a person, a human being, disfiguring a human being for life against their will, is a sin by all definition, You can't say, for example, that I cannot cut off the finger of my child against his will because it's not in the Quran, or the messenger didn't say, don't cut off the finger of your child, you know. I cannot cut off a person's nose and disfigure him for life against his will, right? In the same manner, I cannot cut off any part of his body against his will, even if he's my son, right? Just because someone's my son, I cannot cut their nose when they're young because I think it looks better, or I think it's better for him because he's not going to get a nasal infection, you know? They're just going to have those two holes and look very nice, um, look just like me. Whatever excuses people use, these are the excuses people will use when they don't want to, use anything. Then they're going to say, "Oh yeah, but it's not satanic. You can do it for other purposes, like medical benefits, for example, right?" But God says He created us in the perfect design, and from all scientific purposes, also, we understand that it is actually harmful based on
Yeah,
true
exactly.
science, that it's actually harmful for you not to have the things that are cut off. It's part of protection that God has given to not just to us, but all animals. Not all animals, but I mean animals that have similar, genital structure like as us, like to protect us and to guard, both male and female, and so many other benefits. Like Brother John said, you can watch the video. Uh, it's called uh, what is it called?
I think the sex and circumcision, a love
This
story
is
or something like
by
that.
Eric. Was it Klopper? Yeah,
Eric Klopper, yeah, something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, like you said, like if I take out one of my kidneys, brother,
yeah.
I'm at 50% less risk of having kidney cancer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So I
or
mean
so,
that type of logic, it's
yeah,
just the
exactly,
statistical fallacy that they
exactly,
try to use. I mean, it's a
exactly.
huge scam. I mean,
Uh-huh.
you made a good song about it. It's such a scam, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
fraud. It's a theft
Mm-hmm.
of the body,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like where I mean, you know, like making someone's decision for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I mean, it really sounds insane. The more you think about it, it's like,
Yeah.
imagine, like, no, I'm gonna decide for you, Suleiman. I think you should
Mm-hmm.
be missing one of your fingers, like, just because
Yeah.
I think that's the right way. Like, I mean, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I mean, that's essentially, if people look at the scam that's happening, and I think that video is good too. That I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really encourage, because it's as good to supplement.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so when people say it's not satanic, like they're saying, then they'll say like, oh, but as you shouldn't say it's not satanic. Well, I mean, if you follow anything other than the Quran, it is satanic, right? Like the messenger talks about, like, God tells you to do 5 daily contact prayers, and like he tells you to do 2 units. Now, if you want to do 3 units, the third one is satanic. It means you're worshiping Satan. You have another idol. It's idol worship, because you have another idol besides God that's telling you to do this third unit. Even though there's nothing wrong, even at the surface of it, looking at it, like a unit of prayer to God alone, like it's so harmless, right? And seemingly it is, but it's not following God's orders. So adding to your thing, following something that Satan is quoted in saying in the Quran verbatim, that I will sculpt for them on your straight path, I will command them to distort the creation, command us, believing that you can mutilate people and it's not going to be a sin. Like, that's, and thinking that God will ask Abraham or anyone for that matter to mutilate themselves or their children against their will, like that's an evil thought, and we know how it says in the appendix 9 that, anyone who has an evil thought about God, like just someone who, for example, who thinks that Abraham was ordered by God to kill his son, it's an evil thought about God. And people who think that way, will not enter paradise because of that, right? Cannot enter paradise. So Someone doesn't even have to have a child and mutilate them to be part of this. Like they can just believe that it's okay, and they have already failed the test. And it's not, I mean, that's just one obvious thing. There's a bunch of other things that these guys are saying, like about submission. They really go like to Satan is pushing them to like different extremes.
Yeah, I just want to say you remember one of the guys, submitter was his username on
Uh-huh.
TikTok. He literally said, I still have the screenshots from the conversation, but
Mhm.
the blowing up of humans, raping, torturing. Sorry for those listening. It's morbid, but it's a reality of what's happening. What has happened? He
Oh
literally
yeah,
said that's collateral damage. Because I asked him, how can you advocate for such evil? And he said, "Oh, that's collateral damage." I have the
yeah,
screenshots if anyone
yeah.
ever wants to
Yeah,
see them. I mean, how can you how can you speak like that? Like,
yeah.
imagine like if that was your daughter out there getting blown up or
Or
God
rape,
knows what
or
else, and you
or
just say, and
even men
someone says, "Oh,
raping.
that's collateral damage." Like, so sorry. I mean, these people are like really uh so bad,
Yeah,
man.
even the prisoners are getting abused, sexually. Right? You heard about that part, right? All those people that they hold as prisoners. The
Yeah, I
guy
mean that's like, dude, that's so
is
wicked. I mean,
stripped
it just
naked
makes
and
my
then
blood boil. What's
yeah,
but I mean,
they're damaged.
but for someone to say, like, I mean, these are evildoers. I mean, they're talked about in the Quran. I mean, these are not even Jews. These are the Cabal, Zionists, Talmudic, Satan worshiping humans. They're the idol word. They're even worse than
Yeah,
idol worshippers. I mean, they're
yeah.
tyrants, and I mean they've been exposed. And for these, for I don't know how you could go so far astray to
Mhm.
support such people. But I mean, God exposes these people. But uh, yeah, I mean, Naveed is defending this guy who's saying, "Oh no, that's okay. It's collateral damage." Like,
Uh-huh. Um, okay, so Melissa said, what did you just say that you go to hell if you circumcise your child? I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Yes, Melissa. So, if you missed part of the the discussion, you could always go back because these videos are recorded and you can listen to any part of it. But basically, we're saying that in Appendix 9, the message of the covenant is talking about, if anyone thinks that God ordered Abraham to kill his son, such an evil people who have such an evil thought about God, just having this evil thought about God, they cannot enter paradise while thinking that, because God does not advocate evil. So it's part of knowing God and his qualities that God does not advocate evil. So to think that God would order Abraham to mutilate his son, or and himself and his servants and other people of his tribe, it's saying that God would advocate evil, like God would advocate mutilation of his own creation and tell people to mutilate his own creation. If I said that, if I said that, you should, for example, mutilate the breasts of your daughter who's perfectly healthy, for example, um, uh, that would be an evil thing, right? I would be telling you to do an evil thing, like, mutilating a person against their will when even they're healthy, just for the fear that they may be encountering that disease in the future, let's say, which is 0.0%, whatever percent minor chance that they could encounter it, which could also be treated with antibiotics. But you just decide to take the extreme measure and uh, cut it off. That's a mutilation of a person. Thinking that God would command him to mutilate himself or and other people, that's believing that God advocates sin, right? Nothing bad comes from God, and God does not advocate sin, and as it says in 7:28. Mashallah, thank you for the brother Abdullah for sharing. the verses, you know. So such an evil thought about God, as it says, he never violates his own law. Any person who believes that the most gracious, most merciful ordered Abraham to kill his son cannot possibly make it to God's heaven. So it's pretty much the same principle, it doesn't have to be killing, it, just having the idea that God would advocate something evil and gross, evil thoughts about God, are basically something that is going to put people to hell.
It's also idol
I
worship.
mean, can we say,
On
It's
top of
idol worship.
yeah.
It's like very simple actually. This
Hmm.
is idol worship, and if you promote idol worship, if you do idol worship, if you're keeping doing that and you don't stop doing it,
Hmm.
then yeah, you go to hell. Very
Yeah,
simple.
yeah,
now
but
can
I mean,
if
I'm also
somebody
missing it
does this
from.
out of ignorance, or that's, I mean, if they repent, like if they weren't a submitter and they do it out of ignorance, and they come around to see the truth and believe in it and accept it and repent and reform, that's their repentance is accepted. Is that right? Like if they,
Sorry, what?
yeah, like if someone did this out of ignorance, I mean, long before submission, and then they come around to see it's a satanic practice and stuff, it's not from God. It's a big, it's a scam essentially. It's
Hmm.
more than just that. But if they repent afterwards, I mean, that's accepted though. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Did you?
Yeah,
Yeah. I just wanted to say that.
yeah. So, yeah, so I mean, I was primarily just coming from the point, when they say, well, you can do it for like just non-religious purpose, because, there is this one group that started this idea that, the messenger said, you can do anything as long as it's not religious. He's talking about, like, a small thing, like, let's say, you decide to gather your child and you say azan in his ear, not in his head, azan in his ear. That's totally harmless, right? I mean, nothing evil about that. So he says you can do anything you want, like akika, they call it. Basically what it is they, when the child is born, they sacrifice an animal and feed the poor. So he said, people do this, is it okay to do that? And he says, you can do anything you want as long as it's not religious. And they took it so far to say, oh, well, he said you can do anything you want. So I can technically disfigure my child because he said you can do anything you want as long as I don't do it for religious purposes. So I can just go like kill a person. I say as
Yeah.
long as I'm not doing it for religious purpose, it's fine. As
Yeah.
long as it's not religious. That's not
Like
what it means. You still have to
these
observe
people are given enough
the
rope to
laws.
hang.
Yeah, anything doesn't mean that you just go and do anything. Like I can just go rape a person as long as I'm not doing it for religious reasons. That is
That's
so.
yeah. I mean, that's. It sounds like silly, but I mean that's their logic, and they're given enough rope.
Mhm.
I mean, per the messenger, like he said, people are given enough rope to hang themselves. So there's traps for people who would, just like in Surah 3, it says, those who distort the meanings and stuff. I mean, the same can go just to befit
Mhm.
their idea, their twisted idea. I mean, the same can go for God's messenger, the
Mhm.
covenant. They'll take things out of context, to alter, or altercate. Uh,
Mhm.
what's the word?
Yeah.
Expiate a certain meaning, in order to lead the people astray. So, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's something that I think, uh, yeah, people should really think about, because I mean,
Mhm.
if you look at why most people do such
Mhm.
a thing, they're not even thinking for themselves. Literally,
Mhm.
they're just following the crowd. I mean, they're
Mhm.
just doing it because everybody else is doing it. Oh, well, the doctor
Mhm.
says it. Oh, my neighbor and the whole block, the the whole
Mhm.
street. I mean, pretty much my whole community. Everyone does the songs. Literally,
Mhm.
that's why. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why I thought before
Mhm.
knowing about it. I mean, that's why I,
Mhm.
I was thinking, oh yeah, everybody's doing it. So, but I mean, if people really were to question and
Mhm.
examine, then they'll, God willing, they'll be able to see.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean it's wrong from at so many different levels, at so many angles. Like from any side you look at it, like it's bad, you know. So but the thing is, it just confirms people's loyalty to Satan. You know how they don't want to give up. You know
Right.
something so evil, like it's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, how could It's also alarming too, like how he gets so many people. I mean, like the messenger said, one of the mistakes I think he did say this. One of the mistakes we made, what got us in here, of course, was the ego, but we also underestimated Satan's power. He was talking about that in one of the audios, and I guess it ties into also it can tie into, we all thought the test was going to be easy. So, I mean, if he gets something so seemingly horrible, after seeing the evidence and I mean, the clarity on it. I mean, it just shows you, like the verse, you just shared how he will skulk on the path and then come from the left, come from the right, come from before him, but from behind him, and command them to distort the creation of God. So, Dream Team, what's 100%, it's making concession for something other than total submission, as if it's isolated for a person's actions day to day. What does that mean exactly? I
So
guess
someone's called Dream. Someone's has a name.
Dream Team, yeah. LA.
Dream team.
Dream Team, yeah.
Yeah, I thought we are the dream team.
Mashallah.
Yeah, that would be a nice name for a band, huh? Dreamers.
Yeah,
Dream Team,
dream.
yeah. Dream Team.
The Dreamers instead of the Submitters.
Oh, dreaming submitters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, dreaming submitters. Okay. What is 1 + 1? You guys remember this?
Yes, the math book.
The Rashad makes jokes, and then they can't stop laughing after that. What's 1 + 1?
Yeah, he said the middleist thing will set them off sometimes,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, saying God's people, they have fun and laugh.
Mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just even think too, like, I mean, we know what laughter is, but I mean, like, think about God who created like laughter and these things, like, alhamdulillah, like it's hard to, I guess when you think about stuff like that, it makes you appreciate God more and stuff. I mean, what if there was no how do we even explain laughter? you know, I mean, the same can be said for love and stuff. So, uh, yeah, mashallah, good verses read. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think brother who or sister, I don't know who made the comment, the dream team. Maybe it's a team. So the comment that is, I think it's in agreement with what we're discussing. Says 100%. It's making concession for something other than total submission, as if it's isolated for a person's action day to day. So basically, it's like they're trying to get away with it by just making it look like it's an isolated thing that doesn't have anything to do with a person's action on a day-to-day basis, but it's definitely something that is other than total submission to God. It's basically a way for making people compromise, in a sort of deceptive way by Satan.
Mashallah. Yeah. Very true. Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, so I guess God willing, if there are no other comments or questions from anyone, God willing, we can conclude the study maybe, and maybe we can just stay online for a little bit.
Inshallah.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe there are other questions coming from YouTube on it.
I don't know, but it's 11 p.m. here.
Oh, okay.
No, I
It's a
mean,
long, it's a
fine.
long night, brother.
Okay,
Suleiman's getting tired.
no,
It's a long night.
It's a long night. Yeah. We
You
just
need to
rest.
keep going, man.
I've been up for 2 days almost, like on and off. So I'm
That's
just
true. That's true.
working.
You had to travel though, huh? I
Yeah,
think.
Yeah,
there are other things we need to
travel.
discuss, Suleiman. You need to stay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, I mean I want to stay, but I was just thinking like maybe we shouldn't stream the later part of
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. God willing.
So yeah, once the stream ends,